Good evening. I'm Michael J. McMurray. Let me be the first to welcome you to the newest program here on YouTube, The First Branch. Our mission here at The First Branch is political problem solving through an unbiased, nonpartisan analysis of critical issues, and then providing recommended legislation that can then be forwarded to our representatives. We Americans have lost confidence in our elected officials, corporately owned media outlets, and political commentators with a particular ideological slant towards any specific party. This confidence is lost due in no small part to the fact that none of these previously mentioned platforms, and yes, I'm specifically talking to you, our elected officials, y'all have done nothing to actually fix the issues Americans are demanding be solved. The political pundits out there certainly take up a lot of time and oxygen, spouting a tremendous amount of accumulated knowledge on any given topic. And there's no shortage of them taking that knowledge and then owning any other person who has an opposing view. Just look right here on YouTube. A quick search of the word owning will bring up millions of videos on how some public speaker owned some other person. I mean, in some cases, both sides will use the exact same video to highlight how their side owned the other person. The fact that politicians, commentators, and other news outlets drone on and on about how right they are and how wrong the other side is, yet never providing a real tangible answer to any problem, is why Americans have lost faith in the political process. This channel has not been created in hopes of restoring the confidence in these three entities, because it never should have been there in the first place. Article 1, Section 1 of the Constitution states, "All legislative power herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and a House of Representatives. No other branch of the government has the authority to make law, and as such, our representatives and senators only have the job because we elected them to do it. This authority is mentioned in the first three words of our Constitution, we the people. Congress is sought to keep us ignorant of their actions in a continued effort to usurp the power given to us by our Constitution. Statements like, we have to pass the bill so we can find out what's in it, made by Democrats, is just one shining example of the outward contempt our elected officials have towards those they say that they represent. All the Republicans out there right now are like, yeah, stick it to them. Stick it to them Democrats. But y'all Republicans haven't been any better. The attack conservative politicians are planning against we the people is just as audacious. This attack has come by way of term limits. I mean, here's Senator Ted Cruz in his own words. My personal preference would be to make it retroactive, but as a nod to practical politics, it would be much more difficult to get this passed if the immediate consequence of it happening was to throw out a whole bunch of incumbents. It's awfully difficult to get them to vote for it if they'd be immediately giving up their jobs. You see, Republicans have convinced their constituents that we are in fact a representative republic, and then turn around and then try to limit my say on who I want to represent me. All the while saying that it's the swamp of Congress that needs to be drained, and then exempting themselves from the drainage. This is a big government power grab if I've ever seen one. What this statement by Senator Ted Cruz does demonstrate, though, is that neither he nor anyone else in Congress possesses the ability to end corruption. But guess who does? That's right, we do. And it's time we begin to exercise that authority. So how do we go about doing that? Simply put, through this channel. You see, all the politicians in Washington have an entire staff to do their research and fact-finding, as well as write briefs and propose legislation. The average American doesn't have such a staff to assist them in understanding what laws are being passed and how those laws will affect their day-to-day lives. This is where we come in. We want to be that link between the American public and the political process. We are not here to inform you what Washington is doing. Rather, we're here to develop and publish legislation that you will then, in turn, forward to your representatives. We here at the First Branch wholeheartedly believe that we, the people, are the most powerful political arm of the federal government. Where the disconnect happens is in the overwhelming effort it takes for the average American to invest time to discover for themselves what the truth is and how to organize an action committee that would wield enough power to move Congress to action. The First Branch is the advocate of action for the American people. How we seek to accomplish this is by first taking an issue that the Americans have been vocal about, then analyzing the two the current two-party stance on that issue, then comparing those ideas against the truth and writing and publishing proposed recommendations, then calling on you, the American people, to download those documents and then forward them to the representatives in your districts. The exact steps on how to contact your representatives will be discussed at the end of every Friday episode. And this brings us to the episode format of the show. But before I get into that, I want to discuss the idea of comparing the beliefs of the Republicans and Democrats on any given issue and reasoning those beliefs against the truth. This naturally begs the question, what is truth? Now, before I answer this question, I'm going to ask that you not shut me down right away if you disagree. But if you do disagree, I ask that you continue to watch and allow this thought to mature. I'm keenly aware that there's been thousands of years of philosophical, and religious debate concerning what truth is and the fact that no two people can agree on the answer to that age-old question. But it's because of that challenge that I want to pursue the truth. But before we can get to what the truth is, we have to know where to be looking for it. And that right there is the reason philosophers and the clergy can never agree. They never start from the same place. So where is the one place that all people from all beliefs can begin looking for the truth? Well, it's actually written in natural law. It's a term you're going to hear me mention a lot in this channel, and the reason we can all start from natural law is because we're all subject to it. It reigns on the just as well as the unjust. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, man or woman, or whatever your station in life. We're all subject to the laws of nature. Now it would be easy for me to leave that thought right there. And by leaving it right there, I know I wouldn't offend most of my audience. But I'm not one to really play it safe. And it would be very deceitful of me to not be transparent about what I believe for the sake of being more popular. I don't want to be more popular. I want to be trustworthy. I'm asking you to trust me with developing legislation that you will in turn submit to your representatives. You need to know what my personal beliefs are. So I'm going to take a few moments and share them with you. I am a born-again Christian, and as such, I do believe that nature's laws were created by nature's God. Again, don't tune me out just yet. Allow this thought to mature. I promise you, where I'm headed with this is not where you're expecting me to go. Now let's begin this journey of discovery where every journey should begin. At the beginning. Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 and 2 reads, "In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters." Now, I can already hear half of the audience screaming, "That's BS, Michael. I don't believe in God, and I'm certainly not going to believe in that whole Jesus thing. Besides, whatever happened to the separation of church and state?" Well, my answer is going to be simple with you. I agree with you. I want that just as much as any atheist would want it. I don't want some stranger in Washington telling me how I'm supposed to worship. I'm certainly not in the business of telling others how to worship either. And if you give me the chance, I'm going to provide for you two shining examples of how this works. Yeah, one of them will be from the Bible, but the other one is also going to be from the natural world, that world in which we live. So let's start with the example in the Bible. This is the story of the rich young ruler, and it can be found in Luke chapter 18, verses 18 through 24. It's a short story, so I'm just going to read it in its entirety. "And a certain ruler asked him," speaking to Jesus, saying, "Good master, what should I do to inherit eternal life?" And Jesus said unto him, "Why callest thou me good? None is good save God, that is, knowest the 10 commandments? Do not commit adultery, do not kill, do not steal, do not bear false witness, honor thy father and mother." And he said, "All these things have I kept from my youth up." Now when Jesus heard these things, he said unto him, "Yet lackest thou one thing. Sell all that thou hast, distribute to the poor, and thou shalt have treasure in heaven. And come, follow me." And when he heard this, he was very sorrowful, for he was very rich. And when Jesus saw that he was very sorrowful, he said, "How hardly shall they that have riches enter the kingdom of God?" Many lessons that can be learned from this story, but one that I want to focus on is this. The rich young ruler approached Christ himself. The Bible calls Jesus the way, the truth, and the life. This man was in the presence of truth itself. This wasn't a disciple, certainly wasn't a preacher or deacon, and it wasn't a member of the church, certainly not a politician. He was talking to Christ in the flesh. And when Christ said, "Follow me," the man turned and walked away. What's important to note here is what Christ's response was. He let him walk away. You see, Jesus didn't turn and try to run him down. He didn't shame the man in front of everybody. He didn't strike the man down in the prime of his life with a horrible disease. The rich young ruler was simply allowed to continue his life, a life subject to the laws of nature the rest of us are under. You see, neither I or anyone else for that matter has the authority to take from you what God has given you. And that's the freedom to choose to believe what you want to believe. I have no intention of using this channel as a platform to usurp what God has given you. And that's free will. I can't take that from you. No one can. So what does it look like in the natural world? Not to believe, yet still participate, and then not only participate, be an actual benefactor of those that do. There's a wonderful example, and I'm kind of excited to share it with y'all. But before I do, I need to ask you a question. How can you tell if someone's a pilot? Well, they'll tell you. Now, I know it's a bit of a cliche here, but there's some truth to it. And the reason I say this is because I'm a private pilot with an instrument rating. So the example I'm going to give you does come from aviation. The numbers I'm going to quote are pre-COVID numbers, but the percentages are going to remain the same. According to the FAA, 7.2 million people fly on American carriers every day. And that's just here in America. Now, I'll admit, I didn't conduct an actual survey of the percentages, but I'm going to remain confident in the numbers I'm about to say because, well, a majority of the people that I know, when I talk to them about aviation, they don't understand the forces of flight. They don't understand aerodynamic principles or any of the factors that affect weather. The vast majority of them don't even know what these things are. So I'm comfortable saying that roughly 50% of all passengers that fly on commercial airlines don't know, can't quote, or even understand the science behind what it takes to get them to their destination safely. Now, this isn't just some simple apples and oranges comparison either. This is a direct representation between the link between understanding, belief, and trust that the results will end up successfully. Of these three qualities, though, passengers only need to have one of them, and that's trust. Trust in those who are in charge of the flight that they will apply all the disciplines required to ensure the safe arrival to their destination. They don't have to understand science. They don't have to believe in aerodynamics. They just have to trust the ones who do will apply it. Now, this isn't simply blind trust either. Passengers do have the benefit of past precedent. The precedent that other planes piloted by individuals with the proper training and the proper knowledge have provided a safe journey to those on board. Now, I admit, I don't have the benefit of past precedent. No one knows who Michael J. McMurray is, outside of my family, I guess. What I do have, though, is a process by which I can prove myself to you. An observable, a repeatable, and measurable process. So for those doubters out there, I ask you to continue on this journey of discovery with me and let me prove this idea to you. And if you do, I can promise you this: I'll not disappoint you. And along the way, we're going to learn and discover some things together. I'm not here to waste your time. Remember, my desire is to earn your trust. And throughout this journey together, we are going to get to make history by positively affecting legislation that benefits every American. And that's the point of all this. That's what I want to do, to be the medium by which we, as private citizens, take back the power to legislate from those who have sought to limit our influence. And here's how we're going to do that. Each episode will be a two-part series. Each episode series will begin every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Part 2 of that series will air every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And this is where the meat of the episode is going to reside. It is during this part of the episode that the publication of that recommended legislation will be done. Monday's broadcast will introduce the topic. We'll discuss the history behind the issue, analyze both parties' stance on that issue, and then compare those thoughts against natural law. Friday's broadcast will be where we discuss the solutions to the issue, and a document will be published, and a link to the download that document will be placed in the description below that video's episode. There will also be a link to the emails for each of your representatives so that you can email them that proposed legislation. Now, this right here is actually kind of the cool part. But by way of providing a little context, I want to share with you a bit about my past. I graduated from Cibola High School in Albuquerque, New Mexico in 1993. There were just over about 500 people in the entire school the year I graduated. Why do I even bring this up? Because there are only 435 representative districts in the House of Representatives. That means with less than the number of people I graduated high school with, we can collectively influence our federal government. All it is going to take for us to stand up and get noticed is for me to just reach one person per representative district who believes in what we're doing here. This is so exciting just to even think about. Yes, it is ambitious, but it's possible. And this channel is what's going to make it possible. And that's what's exciting about this whole endeavor. All it's going to take is a remnant of Americans willing to give of their time to watch these episodes and take 20 minutes every Friday to email the documents to their representatives. Imagine the faces of our representatives. You know, the ones that we actually hired to do our work for us. Imagine the collective looks on their faces when every one of them arrives for work every Monday morning, knowing that they're going to receive an email from their bosses. Yeah, that's us, telling them the legislation that we want them to enact. Then finally they're going to get it. We're going to be taking our country back. And we're going to do it by simply exercising the right that we've been given by the Constitution to govern by consent, the way it was intended for us to govern. I told you at the beginning of this broadcast, I do not intend to restore your faith in politicians, the corporate media, and political pundits. My desire is to enable the political will of the people. And the first piece of legislation that we're going to take on has to do with the healthcare bill. A bill that actually provides medical care for all. A more accurate way to describe this is how capitalism enables support for a social program that provides for the general welfare of its citizens of this great country. And I'm going to show you how natural law supports this and how nature's God has enabled it. So please join me here on this channel Monday, January 4th, 2021 at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for that episode, for episode 1. This is an exciting time. Let's be part of it together. Let's solve these issues together. And I'd like to thank you personally for setting aside the time to watch this video. So this kind of ends the official portion of the video. We're going to go ahead and continue this video, this episode, and I'm going to take some time to share a bit about my own personal history and the reasons why I even started this channel in the first place. If you wish to hear about these topics, I invite you to continue. If not, thank you again for watching and taking the time to watch this video. God bless. Welcome to the segment of the show that we call Politically Unscripted. This is just where I take some time and share my own personal thoughts and ideas on the show. And tonight I'd like to share with you why I even began this channel in the first place. Where did this whole idea of the first branch come from? I'd have to say it began, probably not this past election cycle in 2020, but the previous election cycle. Watching us become so politically divided during Trump's initial presidential run 4 years ago, I started to see a tremendous divide amongst my friends and family. People who were even considered moderately Republican or a moderate Democrat really swung and became extremists on either side of the political aisle. And I watched my friends and family begin to tear each other apart over political ideologies. And during this past election, many of my family members had become so frustrated, as well as a lot of my friends, become so frustrated with the political process that they didn't even bother to participate in the elections this past year. And as an American who's obviously into politics and who loves his country, we found this extremely disheartening. I've spent 25 years in the military. I served both in the United States Navy and the United States Army. I did 4 years in the Navy. At first I started out, I did 5 years in the National Guard, and then I did 4 years in the Navy, and the remainder of my career was spent on active duty Army. I've done 5 combat deployments, and then I did 5 peacekeeping deployments as well. And I've invested a lot of time in this experiment of democracy here in America. I love our process. I love my country. I've sacrificed for her, and it affected me personally. Excuse me. When my own relatives and my own friends were like, man, I don't even want to be a part of this process anymore. And so it kind of felt like, man, what am I even fighting for if the processes that we've had, that we're fighting to enable and are not even being exercised? And that kind of hurt me. And so I watch political commentators. I'm not against it. I'm not against political commentary. I do watch them. The two that I watch on the Republican side are Tucker Carlson as well as Ben Shapiro, but I also take in a lot of liberal literature as well. I do like Bill Maher. What impresses me most about Bill Maher is that he does have a desire for the truth. I don't agree with all of the socialist stuff that he gets into, and I'll talk about my own personal views on what I am politically and how I believe politically here in a minute. But what I do appreciate about Bill Maher is he's probably the only one that I can find out there that's actually digging for the truth. I've been watching him for years. And when he first began his show, Politically Incorrect, and then with his Real Time Now show, with his show Real Time with Bill Maher now, and I've enjoyed his shows, and I've seen him grow. I've seen him change some of the positions and some of the stances he's had. He's okay with holding liberals accountable. He's okay with holding Republicans just as accountable, and he certainly has the courage to share his ideas. And I enjoy that, and I like that idea. I think we need to have the courage to share ideas, and even if there are people that oppose it, to have the courage to share those ideas. And so Bill Maher on the liberal side is the one that I appreciate the most. I will listen to Rachel Maddow. She's a bit more extreme, but I will listen and pay attention just to see where even someone on the extreme end believes and what drives them to believe what they believe. I don't discount them. I'm certainly not going to make fun of anybody for what they believe. Something drove every single person to believe what they believe. So to attack it from a personal level is to be extremely insulting. And so I take a much more personal approach to my disagreements with individuals. It's not I don't want to personally attack anybody who has an opposing view. I enjoy civil discourse. I enjoy the back and forth and banter that comes from sharing one's ideas, even with a group of people who may not agree. And to see that divide take place in America, it hurt me big time, especially for someone who has invested so much time away from my own family, away from my own country, placing myself in harm's way, having done those 5 combat tours. I'm invested in this process, and I love America very much. And so I'm not happy with the way that this divide has become, and it has done something personally to me that has caused me to even abandon party politics wholehearted. I'm not into party politics whatsoever. So there are things that I have that are very conservative views. There are things that I have that are very liberal. But if you were to put me in a nutshell and you would have to label me, I am a capitalist who believes in social programs. And that makes me what I call personally a nationalist. I am not a Republican, and I am certainly not a Democrat. I am a nationalist in the purest sense of the word. So I have an older brother and I have a younger brother, and I've shared this idea with my older brother and younger brother. Matt's my older brother, Mark's my younger brother. And they've always asked me, well, Michael, what's your take on nationalism? Because what we see in the media is that they're a bunch of white racists. I am obviously white, but by no means am I a racist. And by calling myself a nationalist, I know that I'm going to open myself up to be attacked as a racist. But let me define for you what I mean when I call myself a nationalist, and I mean that in the purest sense of the word. The easiest way I can describe it by not giving you some textbook definition is that if you were to take who I am, not the flesh and bone, and that is my personal countenance, you took my heart, you took what makes me on the inside, and you were to put that inside of a Russian and place them in Russia, I would be Russian, and I would be a communist, and I would do what it is to make Russia better. You take that same person inside of me and you place them in North Korea, I would become a North Korean communist, because that's what I believe. I believe that if you're in that country, that should be your home. That's where your loyalty lies. The same if you were to put me in South Korea. I would be a South Korean, and I would want what's best for South Korea. You put me in a North African country, or you put me in a South American country, and then that's where my loyalties would lie. And so what I mean by that, if you're going to ask me, Mike, what's your one sentence definition of a nationalist? I believe in national sovereignty. That's why I don't believe that America should be going around trying to tell other countries how they're supposed to live. But I do believe that we here in America have a say in how we're going to live. And that's what this channel's about. It's about broadcasting how we want to live, not people in Washington telling us how to live. That's not how we're designed. In the Declaration of Independence, it talks about how we as the governed consent to how we're to be governed. And I believe that. And that's something very personal to me. And when I hear of my own friends and family not wanting to be a part of a process, they're actually relinquishing their own consent. And they're saying, you know what, I'm going to let Washington decide. I'm going to let these strangers that I don't know, that I don't care about, decide how I'm going to live. And I disagree with that. And I wanted to create a channel that did one thing, that united Americans with the same purpose, and that is to get involved in governance. It's time we get involved in telling Washington how we're going to govern, not how they're going to tell us how to live. And by that, I'm sure you can tell I am adamantly against socialism. I hate big government. But here's the funny thing. I was once a Republican, and I abandoned the Republican Party. And for the biggest reason I could is they demonstrated to me that they were not going to ever reverse the trends in Washington of Washington politicians trying to grab more of my liberties from me. And you can't say that you're a conservative and say that you're okay with governing the way that we've been governed. No law that has given Congress or those in Washington more power has ever been repealed. We're losing our liberties as individual Americans because we don't know how to engage the political process. I want us to engage the political process. That's why we're even called the first branch. I believe that we the people is the first branch of the federal government. It's not the legislative branch. It's not the executive or judicial branches. Why? Because above all, we the people get to consent to how we're going to be governed. And that's what I want to do here. Those are my personal beliefs. That's what's driven me to build this channel, to want to motivate the average American citizen to finally say, you know what? Here's a guy who's advocating on behalf of the American process. I'm not here to advocate for liberals. I'm not here to advocate for conservatives. I'm not here to advocate for Republicans or Democrats. I'm here to advocate for the American people. That's what I want. And the American people deserve an advocate. They deserve someone who they can look to and say, you know what? This is a guy that has America's best interest in mind, not a special interest group's interest in mind. And the only way that we're going to do that is by collectively coming together. I'm not asking you to agree with everything that I say, but I'm going to ask you to engage in the process. Engage your representatives and your senators. It's in Congress where our laws are made. That's the only place our laws are allowed to be made. And yet we've allowed presidents to run this country through executive order and create laws unilaterally. And that is completely against the Constitution. And it says that in Article, and that's what I talked about today in the previous segment, Article 1, Section 1. It's the very first article that's telling us where our power comes from. And it comes from us. And it's time we take it back from Congress, who has usurped it. And then not just Congress. I'm talking about the executive branch as well. I'm talking about the president and all of the cabinets that he has. The cabinet that he has and those the cabinet secretaries that he is in control of. It's time that we start controlling our government and we tell them we're their bosses. But here's the deal. Like Americans, on average, they don't even understand how they're supposed to engage that process. And so we're going to do that here at this channel. We're going to do the work. Look, I get it. You may not agree with what we publish on Fridays, and that's okay. But if you don't stand up and say you disagree, I promise you, I'm going to contact my representative every Friday. Every Friday, my representative and my senator are going to get an email from me explaining how I wish to be governed. And then I'm going to publish that for the rest of the America to download and send to their representatives. So if you don't agree with me, then the way that you're going to have to express that is not just on YouTube. You can get on social media and tell me how stupid I am, and you can make fun of me. That's okay. You have the freedom to do that, and I'm not going to try to take that from you. I'll defend myself. That I'll do, and I'll do it as best I can. But my goal here is not to get you to agree with me. My goal is to get every American participating in the political process. Above everything else I want to do is I want Congress to finally shake in their boots and realize that America, the American people, the will of the American people is what's going to govern us from now on. I promise you I'm going to do my part. And I promise you I'm going to do my part on your behalf. Again, you may not always agree with me, and that's okay. I would venture a guess that I would probably get on average 35% of Americans agreeing with me. But that's enough. That's enough to make a lot of noise in the halls of Congress. And I'm okay with that. There are things that Republicans do right. There are ideas that the Republicans have. The idea of small government and limited government, limited federal power, I agree with wholeheartedly. To me, it is the one thing that makes me a conservative. I am a capitalist because I believe that it takes capital to run social programs. Because if you don't have capital, you can't fund anything. And so these two basic principles, they make me conservative. But I'm not Republican because I don't espouse myself to the Republican way of governing, because they say one thing and then they do another. But I feel the same way about Democrats. They say that they're for the people. Yet every law that is coming out of the Democratic Party does not afford the individual liberty. You can't say you're for the individual and then talk about how the society has to remove your liberties in order for you to participate in society. Then you're not for the little person. You're for big government control to shape a society the way you see fit. And I am against big government, but I'm all for these social programs that the Democrats espouse themselves to, and that's what I'm for. I'm for those social programs. And on this show, I want to take you on a journey. I want to take the American people on a journey of how we can achieve those end goals of social program management through capitalism. And it's going to take capitalism to manage those programs. But here's the deal, America. If we don't speak up, if we don't tell the people we've elected in Congress to enact these laws the way we want them done, then it's never going to happen. We're going to spend our entire lives being told how to live rather than telling the people we've elected how we want to live. So you're not going to be able to do that just on social media. Yep, you can make a noise, and that's what political commentators do. They make noise. They bang a lot of pots and pans, and they get a lot of people riled up. Oh, them Republicans are horrible. You Democrats are evil. And at the end of the day, the people who are evil and the people who are wrong are the people who do not act. The people who have all of the knowledge and fail to act. This channel is built for action. It is built to enable the American public to contact their representatives with responsible legislation, not legislation from a special interest group that wants more money for its programs, but legislation that is built to improve the lives of every American, every citizen of this great country. We do have a tremendous document inside the Constitution. It is. There are flaws in it. There are a few flaws in it. And it's why I would not call myself a constitutionalist. I'm not a constitutionalist. I'm a nationalist. The Constitution can be changed. So when Republicans and these conservatives, they try to make themselves sound more patriotic by saying you're a constitutionalist. All a constitution is a governing document. I think that's the definition of a constitution. It's the rules by which you govern yourself. I mean, every socialist country has a constitution. Every communist country has a constitutionalist. So saying you are a constitutional Republican, all that means to me is that's the same thing as saying you're a constitutional socialist. You're a constitutional communist. You've tied yourself You've tied your belief system to a document that can be changed, because our document, our Constitution, can be changed through the amendment process. So there's no real weight or anchor or roots into your argument of saying that you're a constitutionalist, because we have the amendment process and it can be changed. We've seen that happen. All right, we have the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments that eradicated slavery and the Jim Crow law eras and all of that stuff. So we know that they can be done. What motivates me, what anchors me in my beliefs, is that I want to do what's best for Americans. All Americans, not just Republicans, not just Democrats, not just whites, not just blacks, not just Native Americans, but every person that's in this country, everyone that resides in its borders. And so the first issue that we're going to take on and we're going to tackle is we're going to tackle the healthcare issue. And so on the 8th, I'm going to publish a document that will be available for you all to download and then send to your representatives. And I'll explain how that looks. Certainly, the Monday's episode is going to give us the history and science behind how we're going to formulate the bill. And then on Friday, we're going to go through the numbers. We're going to go line by line. And that's one thing that no one seems to be doing right now. Not any political commentators, no news outlets, certainly not the politicians. They will not give a line-by-line answer as to how these problems are going to be solved. And I have to be honest with you. I've shared some of my thoughts about how I've already planned on solving this problem with the healthcare bill. And I've already received pushback not pushback, but certainly some constructive criticism. Some of it's helped me shape the process of developing the bill, and some of it was very good criticism because it made me dig into my own math, my own processes better, and to truly understand them better. But a lot of it was just some people don't want this to succeed, and a lot of the questions that came out of this, well, not a lot, some of the questions that came out of people questioning this is Mike, it's not going to work. Well, you can't say it's not going to work because what's not worked so far is what everybody else has done. So it's time we try something new. And this is true out-of-the-box thinking on how to solve this problem with the healthcare bill. And I understand that when episode 1 comes around and we talk about the history and the science and the biblical representations and examples that we have on how to solve this problem, there's going to be a lot of pushback. I expect pushback from both Christians and the scientific community because they don't want the problem solved. It's clear. We've had almost 200 years to solve this problem of healthcare problem issues in America. And it's a bunch of college-educated people that sit up in Washington with their special interest groups. And here we are in 2021, and we still haven't solved this problem. Well, no more special interest groups. This is just a guy with a calculator and a desire to see things succeed. That's all I am. I'm just a guy who sat down one day and said, enough's enough, but I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to start figuring these problems out. Because certainly the people I hired to do it, my elected officials, they're not doing it for me. And so I'm going to do it. But I can't do it alone. It's going to require the help from the American people. But what does give me a tremendous amount of hope is the fact that there's 435 voting representative districts for the House of Representatives, and so that's not a lot. This is an achievable goal to reach 435 people, one person per representative district. That is ambitious, but it is achievable. And that's what's exciting. And that's where I'm motivated. When I discovered that small little math problem, when I discovered the answer to that small math problem, I'm like, wow, like this is doable. We the people can really move some political mountains here and solve some of these deep issues. And so, like I said, episode 1 is going to be about solving the healthcare bill. Episode 2, well, I'll give you more about episode 2 maybe Monday when we talk about the healthcare bill on Monday's episode. So I'm excited about it. I'm looking forward to the work that we have ahead of us. I'm looking forward to solving these problems together. I don't want to move against Washington. That's not the goal. I want us to begin to work together. I don't see this as an us against them. I see this as an us motivating them, us reminding them why they're there. They're there for us. They're not there for themselves. People say, do you want to end corruption in D.C.? This is how you're going to end it. Remind them that we're in charge. Remind them that we're going to tell them how we want to be governed. And if not, we're going to do all we can to vote you out. You want to end these long terms of corruption? Remind them that we're in charge. And then when you become more active in the political process and you begin to truly see how little or how much your representatives care for you, you'll have a much more informed process when you step inside that voting booth and you know who you're going to vote for. And that's what scares our representatives. That's what scares our senators. That's what they're afraid of. They have a desire to keep the American people ignorant of the processes that they're using in Washington so that they can continue to keep their thumb on us. And let me tell you something, there ain't a single Republican that's reversed it either. So before you get on your high horse Republican, say, see, Democrats, there's another guy that hates you. Understand, I don't hate anybody. But I certainly hate what's happened to our country. I hate what's happened to our political processes. And I do aim to work to fix it. I'm not one that's going to sit here and complain. And one of the greatest attributes that I was ever taught in the military is you don't ever come to the table with a problem without a solution. Look, I got this nice, beautiful wooden table. I'm going to come to this table every Friday with a solution. Yep, Mondays we do have to identify the problem, and I'm going to frame those problems correctly. And the process that I use, there is a mathematical format to problem solving. I taught it to my kids. I'm going to use it. It is effective. That's the method I'm going to use. And so, yes, every Monday, we got to talk about the history of the issue. We're going to compare those issues. We're going to identify the problem. We're going to frame that problem correctly. And then on Fridays, every Friday, I'm going to sit at this desk, and we're going to solve those problems. And we're going to send proposed legislation to our representatives. And I'm excited about doing this with y'all. I really am. I'm excited to see what the future of America looks like. But more importantly, I'm excited to see all of us involved in that process. I want to thank you again for taking the time to watch this video. I'm motivated and excited about moving forward. I'm excited about Monday's episode. I'm excited about solving these problems. And I'm excited about taking back the control that we should have over the elected officials in Washington. It's time that the first branch, that we the people, govern by consent. Again, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy days to watch this video. And as always, God bless.